Boardman as we remember the life and legacy of Grace Lee Boggs. Alice Jennings was a close friend and caretaker of Grace. She's a lawyer and board member of the James and Grace Lee Boggs School. Alice, can you talk about her last days, Grace's last days, and what you feel is most important for people to understand about this extraordinary woman?
Well, Grace's last days were gentle. They were full of friends and discussions. Grace still wanted to carry on the conversation of what time is it on the clock of the world. She still wanted to talk the discussion about revolution and what it means to be a human being, to stretch one's humanity. Grace's legacy for us who are left here really is to consider that for each of us, we have our own responsibility to transform ourselves. As a transformative leader, it wasn't that Grace wanted us to do as Grace did, but rather to explore ourselves to see what we could do to be better human beings, to stretch our own humanity, and to be involved in the social justice issues of our day.
In 2010, I interviewed Grace Lee Boggs at her home in Detroit when we were there for the U.S. Social Forum.
The World Social Forums began after the Battle of Seattle in 1999. And the slogan, "Another world is possible," emerged out of a completely new mentality when people recognized that essentially those in control are dysfunctional, and that the old social democracy dependence on those in power to give you things, that period is over. And I think it's really wonderful that the Social Forum decided to come to Detroit, because Detroit, which was once the symbol of miracles of industrialization, and then became the symbol of the devastation of deindustrialization, is now the symbol of a new kind of society, of people who grow their own food, of people who try and help each other, to how we begin to think not so much of getting jobs and advancing our own fortunes, but how we depend on each other. I mean, it's another world that we're creating here in Detroit, and we had to. I mean, we didn't do so because we are better people than anybody else. But when you look out and all you see is vacant lots, when all you see is devastation, when all you see, do you look at it as a curse, or do you look at it as a possibility, as having potential? And we here in Detroit had to begin doing that for our own humanity.
That was Grace Lee Boggs in 2010. I want to go back 3 more years to 2007, when Democracy Now!'s Juan Gonzalez and I spoke with Grace Lee Boggs and the late poet and activist Amiri Baraka to mark the 40th anniversary of the 1967 rebellions in Detroit and Newark.
Amiri, well, what has changed in these 40 years in terms of consciousness and in terms of what the country has learned from that period?
Well, actually, in some ways, we've gone full cycle, but up to another level. I mean, we went from the kind of blatant brutalization of white supremacy and racism. We then organized ourselves and elected 2 black mayors. None of my children, for instance, have ever grown under white people ruling in Newark. They don't even know what that is, you understand? And so we can be proud of that. But at the same time, after we had our 2 domestic kind of mayors who compromised relentlessly with corporate power, you understand? Now we've come full circle and
let me ask you a question, Amir. Do you think that we have challenged and criticized and evaluated black power sufficiently?
Have we? No, but I've been doing it for,
when are we going to do it?
Well, I've been doing it for almost 37 years. I mean, having 2 black mayors there, Sharp James and Ken Gibson, I was probably their most relentless critic all the time. But now we have somebody who doesn't compromise with corporate power, but who represents it. So that's the difference.
Well, do you think it's a question of changing an individual, you know, from changing
you
from
have to
Gibson,
get an individual who's willing to change the system. You have to get an individual who's willing to actually struggle with the system to change it. As long as you have people who...
I mean, what do we mean by struggling with the system? When are we going to be...
To make substantive changes, to make infrastructure changes.
When are we going to understand that we have to create new infrastructures?
Yeah, but you can only do that through people, you see.
No, but you're not going to do it from people at the top. We're going to do it from people at the bottom.
You have to mobilize the whole community, but what I'm saying is the people at the top became accommodated to being in power and not changing it.
Maybe what we've done, yes. But you see, we've put so much emphasis on taking over the power structure, and we became prisoners of it.
That's Grace Lee Boggs debating the great poet Amiri Baraka back in 2007 on Democracy Now! In fact, next week on October 15th, we'll be speaking with Ras Baraka, Amiri Baraka's son, who is now the mayor of Newark. But I wanted to turn back to Grace Lee Boggs from the last time she appeared in our studio here on Democracy Now! In 2013. And finally, Grace, talk about getting older.
You know, Bette Davis was supposed to say, aging ain't for sissies.
Aging ain't for sissies.
It ain't for sissies. I mean, when you have been very active all your life and suddenly you're very restricted and don't have much mobility, it's tough. And it's tough when you've been married for 40 years to be living alone. But it won't go on forever. And I think I'm so grateful that Grace has made this film, because I think she has help make my life mean something to people at a time when I think people need what my life means. I hope that doesn't sound arrogant, but the American people are very needy. They are very needy. They need to know that a revolution is to advance their humanity and to advance the humanity of the human race. They need to know that a revolution is to create solutions and not to get angry at the people. We need to know that a revolution is not just protest, it's not just anger, it's not just a search for power. It's a search for real problems of how to be a human being. And I think that's what's unique about the American Revolution, and that's what's unique about this country. Because even though there is a lot of poverty, there's a lot of inequality, there are a lot of physical hardships, I think the most profound hardship of the American people is that they want to change. They want to change themselves, they want to change this world, and they don't know how to do it. And revolution is the way to do it, but not the old kind of revolution. So I think in that sense, the reason that people are responding so positively is that the film does meet a need, a very profound need. I mean, this country is in such deep trouble spiritually, in every human sense. It's not just the finances, it's not just the joblessness. It's, I believe in a kind of American exceptionalism, that whereas in other countries you face the material hardships first, and they become central. In the United States, it's something that's a hunger that's much deeper. that we have to find our souls.
That's Grace Lee Boggs. The last time she appeared on Democracy Now! Here in a wheelchair, we moved the table in 2013. Her caretakers, her friends around her. That was 2 years ago. She was about, 98 at that point. And Alice Jennings, as we wrap up, when I last went to visit Grace at home, what I was most struck by was the love, that she was in a cocoon of love, that you, Shay, and her caretakers, Rick, overall, just enveloped her in. That also included her books, discussions, her passion right to the end. Alice.
Yes, we tried to do what was right by Grace. She had always loved us. She had always given us books. She had always been there to talk when one needed to talk. And I think that we were able to, Grace beat 2 full terms of hospice care and got kicked out eventually. So we thought that we did our job. And then she gently let go yesterday morning.
Well,
So,
Alice,
yes, our dear friend.
our condolences and congratulations for being a part of this great woman's life and being there with her to the end. Alice Jennings, close friend and caretaker of Grace Lee Boggs, lawyer and board member of the James and Grace Lee Boggs Center. Grace Lee Boggs died yesterday at the age of 100. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.